All right. Yeah, so I will send out a recording of this video afterwards. So if you can't stay on the whole call, that's perfectly fine. It will be sent out afterwards. But thank you all for joining this evening. My name is Ben Strunk. If you're in the Triangle area, Wake County, Johnston, or Durham counties, I've probably received emails from me in the past or seen me at the sites, but I'm the official assigner for those three counties for flag football. Um, and I appreciate you all joining the call here tonight. The hope is since we have 40 plus schools across the state that are playing, that have said they're playing in the state tournament, which is exciting. So first of all, thank you all for everything that you're doing to support flag football and your players, your students in this game. I think it's been a great start, great initial start to the year, to the first inaugural season. Excited to have a state tournament, but wanted to have this meeting and to send out some information as we get into the state playoffs, and we're having host schools across the state so we can find some consistency with rules and equipment and some of that stuff for the tournament. So this is just a little bit more about me. If you My email address and phone number are on the screen. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to take that down and shoot me an email. You'll get an email from me either later tonight or tomorrow with this recording as well. So ground rules, again, please go ahead and sign in if you haven't already. It's in the chat. I'll put that in one more time for the folks that just came in. If you do have any questions as I'm going through stuff, please go ahead and throw those in the chat. If you see me looking to my left, I have it up on another screen here. So please, I'll stop and try to answer questions as we go through. And then we'll also leave time at the end if you'd like to unmute and ask anything at the end. Happy to do that as well. Again, the rule set we're using is the USA's 7v7 rules. There is no national high school flag football rule standard. I have heard that there is a committee, just so you all are aware, there is a rules committee right now that's convened, a national committee to look at creating a national high school flag football rule set. So that does not currently exist. The rules we're using are the USA 7v7 rules, and a modified version of that as well. I will send out to know at least all the schools in Johnston, Wake, and Durham County have already seen the rule sheet that we've been using this year. I will send it out in this email to everyone, so that you have all of that in front of you with the few modifications to the USA football rules that we're using. I will also share a scorecard. This is something that we've provided to our officials here in the Triangle. And the back of the scorecard has a lot of the penalty enforcement information. So I'll send that to you all as well, just so you have it. It's a double-sided document. You can print it front and back, and it'll have both a scorecard on one side and some of the penalty stuff on the other side. If you would like a quick cheat sheet, so we're all kind of looking at the same penalty information. All right, and as another resource, sport. Uh, so somebody have a question? Sport Deck is a new a new officials resource company that I'm actually a part of. But one of the things that we're trying to create is simple ways for officials specifically to review game rules. But I did want to bring it up in case there are any coaches or players that might be interested in just having a quick kind of review resource. So we do have a 50 card flashcard deck that is based on the USA Football 7v7 rules. So the rules that we are using. I'll send you some information about that in an email if you want to check it out. But it is a great little quick, review study if you want to be able to review the rules in another way. A little bit easier than reading the 15-page or whatever rule book. It's more in a flashcard format. All right, so as we get to the tournament, I know this has been shared, I believe, with everyone from, I think, Darren or maybe your ADs, I believe this has been shared out to everyone that the format for the state playoffs is the first and second rounds will be played Wednesday, November 20th, third and fourth rounds Wednesday, December 4th. and then the semifinals and finals Saturday, December 7th at Durham County Memorial Stadium. I am not involved with creating the tournament or the bracketing or any of that, so I'm getting the same information primarily that you are from the committee that is doing that. But as a reminder, teams will play. If you win your first game, the first round, you would play again in the second round at the same site that night, right? So depending how the brackets work out, teams may play one game or may play two games, depending on kind of where they're seated in that on Wednesday, November 20th. As a reminder for host schools, so if your school is hosting for the state playoffs, the host schools do need to provide an announcer, a clock operator, a down box, and an operator for each field. So if you're running two fields, we do need a down box and a volunteer to operate that down box for each field. And then ticket takers and athletic training coverage. So I know that was in the document, at least that I've seen for state tournament requirements. That down box is super important for the officials to have on the field. And then host communication pieces. From my understanding, the host schools are going to help with kind of game times and so forth. I don't know that for sure. But once everything gets set, please make sure if you're the host school that you're working with your local officials assigner. So if you are in Wake, Johnston, or Durham counties, that's me. If you're in another county, that is whoever you've been working with all year as your official supervisor, officials assigner. Make sure that they are aware of the games and times because I know I don't have that information for who all of those people are. Make sure that they're aware and that they are scheduling officials for you. And then also, please make sure you work with whatever teams are coming to your site to figure out the jersey colors. So if we end up with two teams that are going to the same site for state playoffs and they have the same, they both wear red, we need to make sure that we have another jersey option in case those two teams are playing each other. So those can be pennies, that would be fine, but we do need some other color option there to make sure that we don't end up with two teams that are red playing each other. All right, now we're going to get into the rules. I'm not going to hit on everything, right? This is not an entire rules clinic, but I do want to go through and talk about some of the things we've seen so far in gameplay, and just a kind of a broad review of some of the rules we want to make sure that we're consistent with across the state as we get into the state playoffs here. So as a reminder, this is what our field should look like. We have a 50-yard field with the two 10-yard end zones. We know that. We just have the one 5-yard no-run zone from the 5-yard line to the goal line. I know we had a few, I think, at least in the triangle, I think we got them fixed, but we had a few schools that just the layout that they had for their field painting included no-run zones around midfield as well. We do not have no-run zones around midfield. We only have them between the 5-yard line and the goal line. And we know that all possessions, new possessions, are going to start at the offense's 5-yard line, except for following an interception. So following an interception, wherever they return that interception to, that's where that possession is going to start. And we get 4 downs to cross midfield, 4 downs to get in the end zone once you cross midfield. Also important are the team boxes. So we do need to make sure that we have team boxes marked, meaning it can just be a cone, but those are between the 10 yards lines on each side of the field. So we can't have coaches or players down here inside the 10-yard line, next to the goal line. Coaches and players on the bench should not be inside the 10-yard lines on each side. So please have some sort of marking, whether it's a line or cones, that is marking the team box. And that team, but the players and coaches do need to stay at least 2 yards off the field. That gives our officials room to work along the sideline. Question in the chat, is there a way to get yard lines every 5 yards? It's hard to keep stats with only a midfield line, 5-yard line, and end zone. Megan, that's up to host schools. Obviously, if they're playing on a football field and they're playing the same direction the lines are, you're gonna have those lines. But it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. So some schools you might have that, some schools you won't, but there's no requirement that they have 5 yard lines. Some field setup reminders. Again, host schools must have the down box and the down box operated for all fields. That is incredibly important for the officials. Team boxes should be marked with a cone. We talked about this at the 10-yard line. Not no runs out at midfield. If you are running multiple fields, so you have 2 fields, we've seen some issues with this throughout the season. Fields have to have at least 3 yards of space in between them. So that's in between the 2 fields. It's also in between the sideline from any kind of obstruction, right? So, if you have a track that goes around your football field and you're using that space, we need at least 3 yards in between the sideline and the track, right? Or a hill or any other kind of, soccer goals, any other kind of obstruction. So if we don't have the space to do 2 fields with the 3 yard buffer, we need to go down to 1 field. And then also, I know schools have used different things. A lot of our schools, if they're on a grass field, have been painting lines. That is obviously preferred. We've seen a few that are using the kind of tape lines, for lack of a better word, where they have to be staked down. They're not ideal. We prefer not to use them, but if we have to, they need to be secured tight to the ground so that they're not a tripping hazard. We need to make sure that is not becoming a tripping hazard for the players. And then on turf fields, and there are some schools that have turf fields. We can use cones. Ideally, if you have a temporary paint, that would be wonderful, and that is preferred. But in a pinch, we can just cone off the field and use some of the existing lines. Can a strong suggestion be made to host schools to not use pylons to mark the end zones and the 5 yard? Question in the chat. Yeah, so the question in the chat is essentially where to put the pylons. Yeah, we should not use pylons ideally for the 5 yard no run zones. Really, if we're painting the field, those should be dashed lines across the 5 yards. But we definitely don't want pylons at the 5 yard no run zone, because I agree that does get confusing. So if we do not have a way to, I'm hoping that all host schools that are hosting the playoffs will be able to get a dashed line across in some fashion. If not, then we need to use like cones to mark the 5 yard lines instead of the pylons, because the pylons signify the end zone. So good question in the chat. All right, flag belts. So we definitely had some challenges with participants, players wearing flag belts properly throughout the season. So let's talk through this. So we know that our flag belts are tightly fixed flag belts. We use the pop socket flag belts, and they have 2 flags, one on each hip, right? Every effort shall be made to keep 1 flag on each hip of the player. So before each play, players should look down and make sure the flags are on each hip. Now, I will tell you, as you have seen in gameplay, these flags move around very easily. So, even just a normal running during a play can shift them a little bit. And certainly a ball carrier that has a defender go and try to grab the belt can certainly twist those flags pretty easily. So what the officials should be looking for is getting those flags on one on each hip to start the plays. Flags should be clearly visible, hang down freely, and they can't be covered in any way. So we need to make sure that jerseys are tucked in. Jerseys need to be tucked into the shorts if they hang down below the waist. They cannot cover the flags. Obviously, the flags and sockets, they can't be glued, they can't be altered. The flags should be at least 2 inches by 15 inches. More about the jerseys. So with jerseys, they should have a number. And again, we need to make sure that we have both light and dark options. Work with your host schools. Host schools should be working with the visiting teams to make sure we just have contrasting jerseys, right? We're okay with a red jersey versus a green jersey, but we can't have red versus red, right? I think we all understand that. If we need to use pennies, we can use pennies, but it's on both teams that are potentially playing in the game to make sure that we have contrasting jersey color options. So bring pennies. That'd be the easiest way to avoid it. And that's just some things we've seen so far this year. Again, jerseys must be tucked into the shorts if they fall below the waist. Um, the other piece that we see a lot is that excess of the flag belt, right? So, a lot of these flag belts are large on our players. So they have a lot of excess strap. That strap, any excess needs to be tucked in. That cannot be hanging down below the waist. Obviously, that looks like another flag. So that cannot be hanging down below the waist. It needs to be tucked in. Also, towels, gloves, etc., any other equipment that cannot be tucked into the waist either, right? So if you do have a towel on the field, it needs to be put down in the backfield essentially before the play. But ideally, we're just not bringing towels consistently out onto the field. And then flags should be worn one on each hip. We talked about that as well. So as a reminder, we're looking for those flags, one on each hip before the play starts. That's what the officials should be looking for. These flags do move around a lot. They move around a lot. Shorts. I think we have taken care of this in the triangle, I think. I know we had some challenges because some of the uniforms that schools got during the spring pilots programs and the summer pilot programs, the uniforms that were paid for and provided had a vertical stripe down the shorts. Obviously, I wish they wouldn't have done that when they provided them. But that any striping down the shorts, it makes it confusing for our players, right? It looks like a flag. And these flag belts are challenging. It's because just the flag comes off. So we cannot have any vertical striping on the shorts, right? So whether it's a white stripe, a green stripe, a red stripe, doesn't matter. We can't have vertical striping on the shorts. And those flags need to be a contrasting color. So if we have blue shorts, we can't have blue flags. If we have blue shorts, we need to have green flags. Pants shorts may not. And then we know we can't have pockets, right? Pockets are a danger in flag football as players are reaching in to grab flag belts. They catch a pocket. That's a really good way to injure yourself. So this pants cannot have pockets or belt loops. All right. If you happen to have a player, I don't think I've seen any this year. If you happen to have a player that shows up with pockets, you can tape them, but there needs to be absolutely no pockets created by that tape. And then we know that all players have to have a mouth guard. They must have a mouth guard. I have a few questions about. So what we'll ask you is, because it looks like they're about the shorts. What I will ask you about the shorts, if you have a situation with your uniforms, I want you to send me an email with that information, and we can discuss through email. Just because I know it looks like there's a few different options or different things going on. So please, I'm looking at the chat. Christy, Megan, Davenport, please send me an email or reply back to the one I send you after this with that shorts information, or hang on the call at the end. I'm just looking through the chat. Why would we run some? Brad, that's not up to me. That's up to the folks, the host schools, and the folks making the bracket. So feel free to send them that feedback. All right, moving on. Other game equipment. We know the offense supplies the football should be junior or youth sized. Football can be any color. I know some of the footballs that were supplied in the spring are white and say NFL flag on them. That's fine. It could be junior or youth size, but the offense needs to provide the football. We know that. And then we can't have any jewelry. We have seen this as an issue at times. So that includes necklaces, bracelets, earrings, piercings, anything that would be jewelry needs to come off, right? I know I had a player earlier this year that had an earring in. When she was asked to take it off, she said it can't come out. We hear that a lot. We told her she can't play, and magically it came out. So it's got to come off. It's got to come off, even if it's they say they can't take it off. Well, that's fine, but they can't play. So we can't have any jewelry that's a massive safety issue. And then just some additional equipment stuff, braces. They can wear braces if they're unaltered from the manufacturer. They don't have any exposed metal. That's fine. Headwear. They could wear, and I know it's going to be cold. They can wear, a knit like beanie hat. That's fine. They just can't have build hats, and they can't have hoods. So if they are wearing a hood, the hood's got to get tucked in. So because that creates a pocket up top. They can't wear a hood. It's got to be tucked in, or headwear with knots. Those are all no goes. And then players may tape their forearms. They can wear gloves. They can wear elbow pads. They can wear knee pads. They can wear any of that if they like. And they can have play cards, but they got to be in their arm, right? We can't have a play card on the waist because that again creates a pocket. And then they can have towels, but they cannot be tucked into the shorts. Question was about casts. Casts are fine as long as they have the recovery, the soft padding around. That should be fine. All right, I'll pause here if there's any other equipment questions other than the shorts. And again, I will ask schools that have questions about shorts to specifically send me an email with what your situation is. Awesome. All right, moving on. Timing and scoring. So we know two 20-minute halves, 5-minute halftime. The running clock is until the last 2 minutes of the second half. So as a reminder, clock's going to run all the way through the first half, unless somebody calls a timeout or we have an injury, right? You get two 30-second timeouts per half, and we do have the mercy rule if the team is winning by 30 or more points. Once we get inside the stop clock timing with 2 minutes in the second half, if you're up by 30, we're just going to run the clock for the remainder of the game. So we're not stopping the game; it just runs through the rest of the game. Once we get into the last 2 minutes of the second half, the clock does stop for what's called pro clock, right? It's similar to what happens in high school, college, etc., but it's a simplified version. So the clock's going to stop for anything on the screen. We get a first down, we have a penalty, we have a change of possession, out of bounds, pass, obviously incompletions, after a score, so somebody scores, timeout or injury, any of those things happen, clock's going to stop, and we're going to restart on the snap, all right, in any of those cases. So that's when the clock should be stopping. Your officials on the field, obviously, if you have the clock operator and they're using the game clock on the scoreboard, and we need those clock operators to meet with the officials ahead of the game to make sure they understand how the timing works. But the officials should also be keeping a clock on the field in these cases as well. Yeah, Brad, the question was about the first downs. Yeah, the reality is this is a simplified version of rules. And if you actually look up the USA flag football rules, it doesn't say either way where it starts on the snap or the ready. But for the simplified version that we're using, the clock's going to start on the snap. Play clock. So we know with 30 seconds on the play clock, and that's from when the ready for play whistle is blown. Our referees should be giving announcements to the offense that, hey, there's 10 seconds left in the play clock, 5 seconds left on the play clock. It shouldn't be a surprise if a delay of game penalty is thrown. I don't think I have seen one since in any game I've been to this year, but it is 30 seconds to snap the ball. Live ball and dead ball. So obviously the ball's live at the snap, remains live until the official's whistle blows it dead. And as a reminder, in our version, the 70 in the USA version, these are all times when we have a dead ball. So the ball hits the ground, it's dead in all cases, right? So that includes even if the snap hits the ground, or obviously an incomplete pass, a fumble. So we don't have any live fumbles. Flag was pulled to the ball carrier steps out of bounds. We have a score. Any part of the ball carrier's body, other than the feet or hand, touches the ground. Right, so they can put their hand down to get their balance, but if their elbow comes down, or obviously a knee comes down, anything other than the feet, hands, they're still going to be live. Even if they put the even they have the ball in their hand and they put the ball on the ground to right themselves, that's fine as long as they keep control of the football and nothing other than the feet and hands touch the ground. If the ball carrier's flag falls out, so it's not pulled, it just falls out, they're still down at that spot. Similarly, if a receiver catches the ball when they don't have one or both of their flags, if they catch the ball, they get credit for the catch, but the ball is dead at that spot. All right. And then on an inadvertent whistle, if we happen to have an inadvertent whistle, the team in possession can accept the result of the play or replay the down unless we have a penalty. Go into the chat. When we run 2 games at the same time, we do not keep a clock and let the refs handle that. Is that best practice? Yeah, Jason, I do think that that's probably the best practice. I would recommend allowing the officials to keep the official game time on the field, especially once we get under the 2 minutes in the second half. I have seen some schools that they'll pick one of the fields of the 2 to utilize the scoreboard. Really up to you, but I would encourage folks to allow the official time to be on the field and use the scoreboard just as a reference point. All right, scoring. Touchdown, we know that's 6 points. There happens to be a safety, it's 2 points. Reminders on the point afters. So once a team scores a touchdown, they can go for 1 or 2. So they need to let the referee know if they want to go for 1. That's from the 5-yard line. It is inside the no-run zone, so it has to be a pass play. And then the 2-point tries from the 10. Obviously, that's outside of the no-run zone, so that could be a pass or a run. We did have some questions come up this week. If we have a defensive touchdown, so interceptions are live, even on point after attempts. So if the defense intercepts a pass on the point after, they can run it back. If they score, it's 2 points for the defense. Whether the try is for 1 or the try is for 2, the defense is always going to get 2 points if they return a try or a touchdown. We will have a safety. There's a few instances we can have a safety, right? If the ball carrier's flag is pulled with the ball in the end zone, we would have a safety there. If the ball hits the ground on a snap in the end zone, we would have a safety there, or a penalty with an enforcement spot in the end zone. Any of those would be safeties, 2 points, and the defense gets the ball at their own 5-yard line. And then there's only a couple situations that we could have touchbacks since we don't have kicks in this rule set. But let's say the ball carrier is running down the field about to score a touchdown, fumbles it forward, and it lands in the opponent's end zone. That would be a touchback. Or if the defense intercepts the ball and is down in their own end zone, that would be a touchback, unless a weird situation happened and it was a safety. All right, overtime. So in the rule set, we do use the tournament play overtime is what will be used for all games. It is kind of a sudden death type of overtime. We will have another coin toss. Visiting team will call it again. Whoever wins the coin toss is going to choose to be offense or defense first. The loser decides which end of the field that we're going to play at for the entire overtime. Each team then gets 1 play. So you choose to go for 1 or you choose to go for 2, right? So 1 from the 5, 2 for the 10. And there's no timeouts in overtime. The process repeats until we break the tie, right? So if the first team goes for 1 and is successful, the second team could decide to go for 1 to tie or for 2 to win. So we just have the sudden death overtime procedure. All right, not seeing any. For a touchdown, can only the ball go over the plane to count, or does it need to be the entire body across? I'm getting to that, but it's just the ball. It's the position of the ball. All right, let's talk about the offense. So offensive positions, we know we have the center. So that's the person that's snapping the ball. They are eligible to go out for passes. They do need to snap it between their legs. Then we have the quarterback. The quarterback is defined as the offensive player who first gets the possession of the ball after the snap. They're defined as the quarterback. The quarterback cannot directly run the ball across the line of scrimmage without first handing the ball off to a teammate, right? Now, if the quarterback hands it off and that person hands it back to the quarterback, they could then run, but they cannot directly run across the line of scrimmage. And then the others, receivers or backs, is anybody else on the offense that's not the center or the quarterback, and all of them are eligible to receive a handoff or catch a pass. The only player that is not eligible to receive a handoff is the center. Formations wise, only the center is required to be on the line of scrimmage, right? We don't have any requirements of X amount of offensive players lined up on the line of scrimmage, just the center. The quarterback has to be off the line of scrimmage, which naturally they do, but they could be under center, they could be 2 yards back, they could be 5 yards back. They can line up anywhere behind the center that they like, as long as they're off the line of scrimmage. All offensive players do need to come set. So similar to tackle football, just about any football rule set, all offensive players have to come set before the snap. Once all offensive players come set, one player can go in motion, but the motion rule here in this rule set is pretty defined. So they can go in motion, they're 1 yard behind and parallel to the line of scrimmage. And then they can be in motion at the snap if they meet those requirements. Players must start their motion from a set position, either on the line of scrimmage or within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, which that means that if you have a player lined up 3 yards in the backfield, they can't go in motion because they're not within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, right? And we can't have motion toward the line of scrimmage as well. That would be a false start if we're in motion towards the line of scrimmage at the snap. Now remember, a shift and motion are different. We get this question a lot. All right, if we have multiple players, let's say all the offense gets set. We have all 7 players set. And then 2, 3, 4, however many players all move around in the backfield again and all come set again, that's a shift. As long as they all come set again, that's legal. But once the motion is the one player going across at the snap. So the offense can have multiple players shift into new formations. And then the center must snap the ball between their legs. Got to be rapid and continuous. I haven't seen many issues with this, but it could be to any player in the backfield, and whoever obviously gets the snap would be considered the quarterback. Let's talk about a couple motions because this has been I think a challenge with this rule. So a couple examples. So this is legal motion. So this is good, legal motion. We have an offensive player lined up. We're saying that they're within a yard of the line of scrimmage. Everybody gets set, and then this offensive player comes in motion parallel to the line of scrimmage within a yard of the line of scrimmage. So they can be in motion while the snap happens, right? So that's legal. Let's look at a few examples of what would not be legal. So the same player, so they start a yard off the line of scrimmage, but they come in motion and they are coming backwards, in an angle backwards, and they end up, 3, 4 yards into the backfield. This is illegal motion because they are not running parallel to the line of scrimmage within the yard of the line of scrimmage, right? So this is illegal. Let's look at another one. Let's say that same thing. The offensive player starts, on or within the yard of the line of scrimmage, and then motions behind the quarterback. That is illegal motion if the ball is snapped with them moving, right? Now again, shift and motion are different. If everybody gets set, and this player comes back here and stands next to the quarterback, but gets set again, and everybody's set, they shifted. That's legal. So Coach D, yes, they can shift to the backfield as long as everybody gets set before the snap. You got it. And then one more. As you can tell in this picture, this offensive player is starting more than 1 yard in the backfield, right? So if they're 3, 4 yards into the backfield, they're not eligible to go in motion because they're not within a yard of the line of scrimmage. All right. So we can have players in motion legally, but it is a very defined rule in this rule set as to which players are eligible. So it does take out a lot of those, like, kind of curving back here behind the quarterback types of jet sweeps, right? So they have to be within 1 yard. All right, spotting the ball. Handing this gets to your question. So our dead ball spot is the position of the ball when the flag is pulled, right? Or where the ball hits the ground, right? So if a player is holding the ball out in front of them, which I would teach your players to do, if they're holding out in front of them, they should be given that full yardage, right? So wherever that forward point of the ball is when the flag is pulled, that should be the dead ball spot. We don't have forward progress, right? Because they're not getting pushed backwards, so they shouldn't be. So if the ball carrier, moves backwards, say they gain some yardage, but then they decide to retreat and come backwards, the dead ball spot's still where the flag is pulled, where the ball is when the flag is pulled. So as the question in the chat was, for a touchdown, a player just has to break the plane of the goal line with the ball, right? So it's the same rule as tackle football, really any football. They just have to once the ball crosses the goal line, forward point of the ball touches crosses the forward point of the goal line, we have a touchdown. And then our no run zones, so we know that's just in the 5 yard line to the end zone on both sides. So whichever way the offense is going, right? When we're in that no run zone, offense has to pass the ball. Quarterback can still hand it off, but then somebody's got to throw a forward pass, right? You can't run the ball across the line of scrimmage. If we do, it's an illegal procedure. All right, let's talk handoffs. So only direct handoffs behind the line of scrimmage are permitted. You can't hand the ball off downfield. Those handoffs can be any direction. They can be forward, backwards, sideways, doesn't matter. Any direction you can hand the ball off. And the offense could use multiple handoffs as long as they're all behind the line of scrimmage. Everybody except the center is eligible to receive handoffs. So you can't, snap the ball to the quarterback, have the quarterback quickly hand it to the center and run. That is the only example of an illegal handoff. The penalty is the center sneak. Any player who receives a handoff could throw the ball from behind the line of scrimmage. And once that ball is handed off, all defensive players may rush. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. And again, we talked about this. Quarterback cannot directly run the ball across the line of scrimmage. They hand the ball off, and they get a handoff back, then they can cross. All right, definitions. All right, so flag guarding. Obviously, as we're running with the ball, flag guarding is probably I would say the most common foul that we see as far as kind of a contact foul in flag football, right? So attempt by the ball carrier to obstruct the defender's access to the flags by stiff arming, dropping the head, hand, arm, shoulder, anything, or intentionally covering the flags with the jersey. That's our definition of flag guarding. Here's some specific examples. Most of these are out of the rule book here. The first one, runners may not leave their feet to advance the ball. So that is in this rule set. We cannot dive, leap, or jump to avoid a flag pull. That is considered flag guarding. So you can't dive forward to advance the ball. That also means you can't dive into the end zone in this rule set, right? So the runner leaving their feet to advance the ball or avoid a flag pull, those are going to be considered flag guarding. Runners may legally leave their feet if there's a clear indication that they're doing so to avoid a collision with a player. I've been having some trouble thinking of great examples for that. I think one would be if a defender, dove in front of the runner and then the runner jumped over the defender. That would be a legal reason to leave their feet. But if the judgment is that they are leaving their feet to avoid a collision, that would be considered illegal. We see a lot of spinning, and spinning is allowed. You can spin, but oftentimes we see players that spin. They put one hand down and cover their flag belt while they're spinning, so that would potentially be flag guarding. And then flag obstruction. So we've talked about it. All jerseys need to be tucked in prior to the play. flags on the hips, and free from obstruction. If the officials see that a player has deliberately obstructed their flags, meaning that they've got their shirts untucked over their flags, the flags are off, whatever, in whatever way, the officials see that before the snap, and the officials identify that that player is illegal. That's when we could potentially have a flag obstruction call, and that would be flag guarding. Um, Looking at the chat, if a player is running and they're new. If a player is running, their arm is moving back and forth as you do when running. All right, let me get to the next slide here to answer these questions. So some more flag guarding keys. So some indicators to look for. And this is the same information that I've given my officials in the triangle. Indicators to look for. One is shoulders dipping, right? When shoulders dip, oftentimes it also brings down the elbow, but can create contact with the defender to block a flag. Carrying the ball low, right? Even in the normal running motion. So even if I'm running down the field in a normal running motion, but my motion causes my arm with the ball to go below the flag belt and it hits a defender's hand, we can have flag guarding. Obviously, swatting hands, stiff arming, spinning where you're covering your belt are some things that we would be considering flag guarding. And it's just an indicator for us to look for as officials. When players are running through crowds, oftentimes that's when we see a lot of flag guarding happening. Except for a ball, and this goes to, I think, one of the questions in the chat. Except for a ball carrier leaving their feet and flag obstruction, because those are by rule flag guarding, right? And those are kind of different categories of flag guarding. We need to have contact. We should have contact for flag guarding to be called, right? Because that's the impact. So if I have a player just running down the field, even if I'm, the ball carrier with a runner, if I'm running down the field and my hands are below my waist, but there's nobody around me, that's not flag guarding. There's no impact to the defense there. But as soon as I'm keeping that same normal motion and now I hit a hand of a defender, now we have flag guarding, even if it's the same exact motion. So carrying the ball over the flag belt shouldn't be a foul until there's contact with the defender's hand. Ball carriers swatting with their hand should only be flag guarding if they make contact with the defender. Now, let me get to these questions in the chat. So if a player is running and their arm is moving back and forth as you do when running, can that be considered flag guarding? We've been called that multiple times. Yes, it can be if they hit defenders, if they hit the defender. Absolutely would be flag guarding. If they make contact with the defender, yes. Megan, yes. Yes, agreed. We had a flag guard call due to players' flag shifting to the front while running. To confirm that is not flag guarding. Yeah, that shouldn't be flag guarding unless they notice that flag was shifted before the play, right? If they notice that flag belt was shifted before the play, then that would be considered the obstructions. That would be the obstruction category. Again, these flags move around a lot. They move around a lot. So oftentimes at the end of a play, you'll see the runners, especially if they've had multiple defenders going for the flag, you'll see the flag belt completely shifted because they've been knocking it as they've been trying to get to it. What if you pull the flag of a player and it's an obvious pull, but somehow the flag doesn't come down and they score? But wait, that flag was actually the extra belt length hanging down behind the player on their back. The flag belt over white should be a 5-yard spot foul for it should be an offensive foul. So I think you're asking about the excess is what it sounds like, Jason. You're asking about the excess. Yeah, that's
Correct.
yeah. So that's another thing that we should be getting ahead of the play. In this rule set, there's not a foul for illegal equipment, and that's the same as tackle. There's not a flag for illegal equipment. So if we would potentially have obstruction, if we notice before the play that the belt is not on properly and has that excess hanging down, if the officials notice before the play, we could potentially have obstruction. So that's what the foul would be if we were to get that there. and that would be a spot. Well, if it's obstruction, yeah, I guess that would be a 5 yard spot foul from. Yeah, I guess that'd be a 5 yard spot foul. If that happens and it's called flag guarding, how do we go about that? Because this happens. Hannah, what can you tell me what you're referring to? We had brought up the rule of contact being needed to call flag on this. They said they never heard that before. Absolutely, so. Matt, can you tell me what school you're at? Uh, Coach Walker, define Roswell. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. So I will be sharing this video with at least all the officials that are working games for me. Um, so yes, we will share that with them. But this has been they've seen the same slides all year. Um, define the no jumping rule. We had a jumping penalty called because both feet left the ground, but that doesn't define a jump. Both feet leave the ground when people run fast. Yeah, Coach Walker, it's tough. There's a lot of gray area there. There's a lot of gray area with a lot of these rules. I don't have a better definition of no jumping than what it says. It says leave their feet. I think in practice, we see things like, kind of like a jump cut. Those are tough. I think the rule is intended to stop, people diving and leaping over people and those sorts of things. But the the rule says you can't leave your feet to avoid a flagpole. Unfortunately, that's about as well as I can do. The one of the challenges, as you all probably have noticed and seen, is the challenge with this rule set it is not as flushed out as what I certainly would love it to be. As I mentioned at the beginning with the high schools trying to create a national rule book, that is definitely needed. If you look at the NFHS tackle football book, or even the NERSA flag football book is a different rule set for flag football. Those are each 50, 60, 70, 80 pages long. This one is like 16. There's a lot of stuff not in there. With the player running by themselves and getting flag guarding. Yeah, Hannah, there should be contact. There should be contact. Um, I think I addressed everyone. Let me know if I did. But I'll move on. Blocking and screening. Um, so we know there's no blocking or screening allowed at any time. Offensive players without the ball in the rule book, it says that offensive players without the ball must stop moving once the ball has crossed the line of scrimmage. There's no running with the ball carrier. I think teams, at least in games I've seen, teams have gotten better and better at that as the season has gone on, with instructing players to stop. I think some under the more info section, offensive players do still retain their right of place, meaning that if they stop, they can remain stationary in their position and they don't have to move to get out of the defender's path, right? So if I'm on the offense and teammate catches the pass downfield and I stop, I'm allowed to stand in this spot, right? So a defender then has to go around me. Obviously, I can't stick an arm or a leg or an elbow out, but I'm entitled to my spot on the field. There's a lot of judgment here. This is another big judgment area. We know that the offensive players may not know when the ball crosses the line of scrimmage. So naturally, we're going to have some players continuing to move. So what at least what I have instructed officials to look for is we're looking for the impact, right? We're looking for offensive players moving into the defender's path, and this is a case where we don't have to have contact, right? So if offensive player catches the ball downfield and their teammate continues to move around and her movement causes a defender to go around her and take a wider path to pull the flag, even if there's no contact there, we could have a screening foul, right? Because that movement is impacting the defender. Um, Coach, we'll get to that here in a second, I think. If not, I'll answer it in a sec. Um, and then just a couple other definitions. And I took almost all the definitions section out from the preseason one. You're welcome. But there's a lot of slides. But the two ones I did want to put in here because these are two terms that I have only seen. I've done a lot of different flag football rule sets and rule sets. I've only seen them in this USA one. So I know I've mentioned right of place and right of way already. So right of place again, that's a player that is standing stationary. If I'm standing stationary on the field and I haven't moved, I don't move, I'm entitled to that spot on the field. Players have to go around me. Right of way means that I'm moving in a direct path. So I'm moving in a direct line, right? So if I'm moving in my direct line, and we're talking about who has the onus for contact, if I'm in my direct line and then a player um, moves out of their line to come into me, they're the ones initiating that contact. So the onus of contact would be on the player that doesn't have right of way. So I just want to throw those terms out there because um, determining who contact is on is definitely difficult. So we're looking for the players that are initiating that contact is a better way to say it. Brad, I'll get to that one specifically too. All right, passing basics. Um, legal pass. All legal passes must be. So this is we've gotten better at this one too. So remember, we can only pass the ball forward if it meets this criteria, right? All legal passes have to be thrown from behind the line of scrimmage. They have to be forward, and they have to cross the line of scrimmage. Right. So all three of those criteria must be met to have a pass. There are no backward passes. That includes pitches. That includes tosses. Um, so the only way that you can transfer the ball to another player behind the line of scrimmage is a direct handoff, right? There's no backwards passes, no pitches. Um, Quarterbacks, if you're gonna spike quarterbacks, if they're trying to spike the ball, they can sort of do that. They still have to meet these requirements, and they got to throw it in the vicinity of the receiver. So really, you can't just spike it. It's got to be a legal forward pass towards a receiver to try and stop the clock. And we know we have a 7-second pass clock. It starts at the snap, continues until the quarterback gets rid of the ball, right? So either a handoff or a pass. We have that 7 seconds that the referee will count. If the 7-second clock expires when the quarterback still has the ball, that play is blown dead and it's essentially an incomplete pass. The referee should be giving at least 5, 6, 7. They should be telling the quarterback at least the last few seconds verbally counting, so the quarterback knows how much time they're at. I think I've only seen maybe two plays where the 7-second clock has expired the whole year. Everybody's eligible. We know that. All players except the center can receive handoffs. For legal reception, it's 1 foot inbounds for us, 1 foot inbounds, the first foot. If we happen to have simultaneous possession where both the offense and defense catch the ball at the same time, possession goes to the offense, and the ball is dead. And interceptions are returnable, and that's the only change of possession that does not result in the ball starting at the 5-yard line, right? So wherever that's returned to, that's where we're going to start. Yeah, I'm getting to the blitzers here in just a minute. All right, let's talk defense. There you go, blitzers. All right, let's talk about the blitzers. So all blitzers must be at least 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage when the ball is snapped and must clearly identify themselves by raising the hand above their head at least 1 second prior to the snap. Blitzers should leave their hand up to the snap. That's what we'd like them to do. The direction that I've given officials here in the triangle is that blitzers need to clearly identify themselves prior to the snap, right? And then they need to have that hand up. And our referees should be communicating to them, our officials should be communicating to them to clearly identify before the snap. Because I know it's important for the officials to know who the blitzer is and for the offense to know who the blitzer is. So please instruct your players to raise their hand above their head and then keep it up till the snap. No more than two blitzers, no more than two players may establish themselves as the blitzers. We know that teams are not required to have a blitzer on every play. Question, identify and leave it up. Yeah, so the instructions I've given our officials is we should only be flagging, throwing a flag if they did not clearly identify themselves. Um, to help us with that, it would be wonderful if we can instruct the players to hold it up until the snap. Um, Rushers. So if they're not a blitzer, they can still cross the line of scrimmage once the ball is handed off, or a pass is thrown. Players not blitzing the quarterback, obviously they can defend on the line of scrimmage. We did have some questions, and this goes to one of the questions that was in the chat earlier. So we know a lot of teams on offense, they're using kind of the fake handoff, right? A read option, something where they're sticking the ball into the belly of a potential tailback and then maybe pulling it out for the quarterback. Obviously, you know, there's some deception built into that. So really, this is something actually that just came up here this week, but the direction I will give, at least the officials, is to have a little bit of leeway there on defenders crossing the line of scrimmage, right? Because if I'm a defender and I know I can cross the line of scrimmage when the ball is handed off, if I see the quarterback trying to hand the ball off, right, with the tailback right there, it's probably going to get me to cross the line of scrimmage, right? So if the quarterback ends up keeping it and it's not handed off, as long as that defender retreats back, we don't need a flag on that play. But if they continue rushing, then we could have an illegal rush there. I saw there was another question about the fake handoff. Yeah, so Coach Walker, the illegal flag pull. We had a penalty called on the player because she pulled the flag when opposing player after the player completed a play action. So there is a penalty for an illegal flag pull. From what you're describing, that doesn't sound like the purpose of it. So obviously there's a big advantage for the defense if they pull an offensive player's flag right before the ball gets there, because as soon as they get possession of the ball, they're down. You know, if there's deception built into that on like a read option, and we're judging that they pulled the flag because they thought they had the ball, we probably shouldn't have a flag there. Now, if a defender, you have the snap and a defender just pulls a flag off of a wide receiver without them having anything to do with the ball, that's what we're looking for in a legal flag pull. Megan, some judge teams require the hands stay up. Sometimes they say just until the line judge acknowledges the blitz. They need to be consistent. Yeah, I agree. This has definitely been an area of inconsistency. Frankly, the rules are not very consistent on it. So again, the direction that I'm giving, at least the officials that I ever see, is that blitzers need to clearly identify themselves with a hand raised above their head, and for them to communicate to the blitzers to keep that hand up until the snap. But as long as they clearly identify themselves, that's what we're looking for on whether we have a flag. Can the defender go to cover the running back in the swing route after the ball is faked, even though it's in the backfield? We have a lot of judgment there. If the ball is faked, the defender should retreat back behind the line of scrimmage. That's the best answer. But there's a lot of judgment there, frankly. We also had a call for impeding the blitzer. Yeah, we'll get to impeding the blitzer. Had a rusher leave early several times. We had a rusher leave early several times, and the ref said defense can't false start. They are not allowed to leave until the ball is snapped. Correct. So they can. We'll get to that actually. As long as they don't cross the line of scrimmage, that's not a foul. But we can talk about a legal rush here. Yeah, there's no false starts on the defense. We would have encroachment on the defense if they cross the line of scrimmage before the ball snapped. But there is no false start on the defense. So let's talk about an illegal rush. The blitzer breaks the 7-yard rush line before it's snapped. And then crosses the line of scrimmage before a handoff or pass. So that's what that question is referring to, right? So if the blitzer leaves early, right? So they're lined up at 7 yards. and they leave early before the snap. We don't have a foul until they cross the line of scrimmage while the quarterback still has the ball, right? If they cross the line of scrimmage while the quarterback hasn't had a handoff or a pass, at that point we would have a flag for an illegal rush. We also have an illegal rush if any of the other players and not blitzers cross the line of scrimmage before the handoff or pass. And then the illegal signal, that would be if we have three blitzers raise their hand. If the blitzer doesn't clearly it's giving a signal that's not way above their head, those would be options. But again, at least I would tell you, I'm instructing the officials to communicate with the blitzers prior to the play to help make sure that they're legally identifying themselves. All right, let's talk about impeding. So this is a specific rule in the USA set. The offense cannot impede the blitzers in any way. So the blitzer has a right to a clear path to the quarterback, and that's regardless of where they line up, right? And then offensive players cannot move to disrupt that blitzer's path or contact the blitzer. This includes an offensive player running a route. So it doesn't matter if it's intentional or not. Now, this right of way goes away if that blitzer rushes late, right? So if they don't go at the snap, but they pause and then they decide to rush, they wouldn't have that same protection. If they go slowly, they're not directly going after the quarterback. If they change their path, they go towards a different spot, or they choose not to rush, obviously, then that protection for impeding the blitzer would go away. They can still rush the quarterback. They're just not going to get the protection. If an offensive player does not move after the snap, they have right of place, if you remember that term. So, for instance, let's say that the center snaps the ball and doesn't move and just stay put, right? The blitzer is going to have to go around the center. But let's say that the center at the snap snaps the ball and then starts moving forward. Even if they move forward in a straight line, if that movement causes the blitzer to go around them, whether there's contact or not, that would be impeding the blitzer, right? Or if an offensive player runs a pass route across the middle and that causes the blitzer to go around them, that would be impeding the blitzer. I saw there were a couple questions about impeding in the chat. I don't know if I answered them all. If I didn't, put it back in the chat. So that's impeding the blitzer. I'll show you an example here in a sec. And then roughing the passer. Those players blitzing the quarterback, they can jump to block a pass, but they can't make contact with. They shouldn't be making contact with the quarterback, with the exception of trying to pull their flags. And obviously, if the quarterback has released the ball, the defender can block it out of the air. But if the quarterback still has the ball in their hand and the defender hits the ball, that's when we would also have roughing the passer, because you can't strip the ball, right? And this is just a kind of a diagram of impeding the blitzer, right? So if our defender here in yellow is the blitzer, they are allowed a clear path right of way to the quarterback. So if this offensive player at snap was to run a crossing route across the field and either knocked the blitzer, so contacted the blitzer, or just made the blitzer go around them, that would potentially be impeding the blitzer, right? That's generally the question we get the most is, well, they're just running a pass route. Well, then they might be running a pass route, but if they impeded the blitzer, we still have a foul. All right, flagpole. We're getting towards the end here. Flagpoling. Legal flagpole takes place when the ball carrier is in full possession of the ball. Defensive player, this is going back to the legal flagpole. Defensive player may not intentionally pull the flags of the player who is not in possession of the ball. But if a defender, if the offensive player is juggling the ball, trying to make the catch, and the defender pulls a flag before they've gained full possession, obviously that's not illegal. They're trying to make a good faith effort to deflag them, so that the offensive player is just going to be ruled down when she catches the ball. And again, if a player's flag inadvertently falls off during the play, which we know happens, the player is down immediately when they gain possession. Defenders can dive So, offensive players, the runners cannot dive, but defenders can. So they can dive to pull flags. Obviously, they can't tackle. They also can't hold or run through the ball carrier when pulling flags. This is another area, there's a lot of gray area here, right? There's going to be contact when defenders are trying to pull flags of the offensive players. There's going to be contact, right? We've all seen that. We're looking for restriction. We're looking for excess contact, right? Is where we would have fouls. We when you get hands going for those flags, and these flags are tough because it's just the flags instead of the whole belt coming off. We're looking for excess contact and restriction. So if a player, a defender grabs a player's shirt, the runner's shirt, and is holding them back, that's when we would look for a holding flag. It is illegal to attempt to strip or pull the ball from the ball carrier. That would also be illegal contact. Defender dives in front of the ball carrier, misses the flags, and contact is made. Would that be tripping? It could be a little contact. Yeah, we don't necessarily have a tripping foul, but it would just be probably a little contact. Yeah. What about grabbing and pulling a jersey while trying to pull a flag? Yeah, again, if they defender grabs a jersey and is holding the runner back, restricting them, and then pulls the flag with the other hand, that would potentially be a holding call. Um, but if they're just going for the flag and they quickly get a jersey grab, but it doesn't affect the runner, we probably have nothing. So again, we're looking for that restriction. All right. Um, so again, I'm going to send in the follow-up email to this, I will send you, we have a scorecard that at least the officials in the triangle have been using all year, that has the penalty enforcement on it. So what you see on the screen. This is an adapted version from what is in the USA book, because there's some things in there that just don't make sense. So we'd have 5-yard fouls and 10-yard fouls. Live ball means that when a flag is thrown, the play keeps going. Dead ball means when the flag is thrown, the play is stopped, right? So most of our fouls are live ball. Most of them include a loss of down or an automatic first down, right? So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will send you the information on the scorecard if that's helpful for you to have on the field. It's at least the same thing that officials in the triangle have seen all year. And then the enforcement spots. So just so you know, depending on whether it's a loose ball player or running play may affect the enforcement spot. This is more for the officials, but this is also on the scorecard in case you're interested to think about where penalties should be enforced from. All right, I made it through. I appreciate all of you for hanging on the call. This is my email. I'm going to put in the chat one more time the sign-in sheet. So if you go in the chat, if you didn't get a chance before the meeting started, please go ahead and click that sign-in form. Let me stop the recording here. I will hang on the call here if anybody has any more questions.